All right, hello, welcome back to online English class. Today we're going to be looking at a content lecture using the screen record function about rhythm in poetry and meter, which is a pre-established or predetermined structured form of rhythm. All right, so we'll be learning perhaps some new language that you haven't been exposed to before, especially if you skipped Honors English 2. So it's just some information that sometimes makes its way onto the AP exam. It's information that is helpful for you writing your own personal analysis of poetry for this class, and also might show up on your Unit 5 test, which is coming up very soon, which is, by the way, a difficult test because it requires you to know a lot of this information about poetry in a very detailed way. So just make sure that you're studying this information sort of slowly but surely and paying attention to these content lectures as best you can, okay? So today I'm going to try to be very concise, very straightforward. I don't want to take up a bunch of your time. But I do just want you to recognize that if you haven't mastered this information by the end of this lecture, but by the end of me explaining this stuff, it does not mean that you just need to kind of wash your hands of it and walk away. You need to study it, okay? You might want to re-listen to it or reread the chapter devoted to explaining it. And just make sure that you understand this content. All right, so we've already worked through our Unit 4 progress check. We've already finished Unit 4, OTN 4. We've already looked at Lecture 6. We've already completed OTN 5 on Dickinson's I Heard a Fly Buzz When I Died. Today we're going to be looking at Lecture 7. In terms of the work that you need to keep in front of you, you need to make sure that you are keeping up with your reading, looking at chapters 19, 20, and 21. And reading Wordsworth's sonnet, The World is Too Much With Us Late and Soon, which is a great example of a closed form poem that uses rhythm and meter in order to help communicate and embody its meaning. You need to complete OTN 4 and 5. You need to send me an email by the end of the week indicating that you have done so. All right, a simple email will suffice. Mr. Dale, I've completed OTNs 4 and 5. Have a great day. That's all I need. A new assignment, you need to complete the Unit 5 progress check, which is currently unlocked on AP Classroom by Tuesday, April 7th. Okay, so today is Thursday, April 2nd. You have 5 days to complete this assignment. Make sure it gets done by 3 p.m. on Tuesday, April 7th. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into our content lecture for the day. All right, so what we've looked at up to this point is a couple different devices that poets use to construct meaning to help make the meaning of their poem palpable. Things that we as readers, we as consumers of poetry, we as the analyst of the poem need to engage with in order to understand, in order to solve, in order to work with the meaning of the poem. All right, that is obviously voice, who's speaking the poem. Diction, what kinds of words are being used in the poem? What do those words mean on a literal but also connotative or suggestive level? What is repeated? Does the language allude to things? How are the words ordered? What is the level of diction? Okay, we talked about imagery, figurative language, and poetic sounds, which can broadly be categorized into euphonic or cacophonous sounds. We talked about onomatopoeia, alliteration, assonance, rhyme. All of these things need to be mastered by you for your upcoming Unit 5 test, as tools that will help you analyze poems independently, and also you need to be able to identify them in poems on your test, very much like the test that we took last semester at the end of our prose unit, in which I identified literary devices, and you had to define those literary devices and then offer textual examples and then analyze those textual examples in your own writing. So there'll be a small portion of that, and also an essay about a poem on your upcoming test. We'll talk more about your text next week. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into our first key idea. Okay, key idea 1.1. Key idea number 1 is that rhythm in poetry, when we talk about rhythm in language, we're referring to the natural pattern of stresses and slacks in language in general, which is used by the poet and organized by the poet to cultivate musicality, to add emphasis. Okay, so in that sense, it can be just decorative. It can be just used to make the words sound pretty, which is good. All right. If you ever heard anyone speak monotonely, right, you know that is highly intolerable after a long period of time. Someone speaks like this with no pattern of stresses and slacks, with no rhythmic pauses, with no okay. That is not natural. That's not the way that language is supposed to sound. So a poet, okay, intentionally uses rhythm to make the lines more musical, to make them more harmonious, to make them more emphatic, but also importantly to help develop theme or meaning. All right. Um, so a stress refers to a syllable that's spoken slightly louder or at a higher pitch or for a longer duration than a slack syllable. And a slack syllable is just a syllable that's spoken less loudly or at a lower pitch or for a shorter duration. It's less emphatic. It is less emphasized in the natural cadence, in the natural music of spoken language. Okay. For example, the word eagle. All right, the emphasis is on the E. It's trochaic, eagle. Cigar, right? The emphasis is on gar, G-A-R, unless you're my dad trying to be funny and you say cigar, right? Impasse, the emphasis is trochaic, again, im, right? Impasse, it's not impasse, right? That's not that word. Precise, once again, if you're my dad, you would say that trochaically, precise, but that word is obviously normally, naturally pronounced precise, which is iambic. All right, it's a rising word. Okay, and statue. Statue is a trochaic word. It's a falling word. It starts with the emphatic sta and then leads to the shorter, slightly less loud chew, like statue. Okay, statue sounds like a sneeze. All right. Each word has a different syllabic rhythm, and native English speakers understand this syllabic rhythm intuitively. Okay, the best way to sort of measure whether or not a word is iambic or trochaic or how it fits into the rhythmic structure of a poem is just to say it a couple times and to say it in a way that it's not supposed to sound, right? Cigar, eagle, impasse, precise, statue, right? Those are obviously all the opposite ways of the ways that those words should be pronounced. Okay, so for example, right, the poem on the right, "The world is too much with us late and soon." That's all those lines are what we call iambic lines. Okay, the stress is placed on world, to, with, late, and soon. It's a rising line of poetry that moves from the world is to, much with, us late, and soon. Okay, we would call that iambic pentameter, okay, because there are 5 feet of disyllabic iambs. The world, 1, is 2, 2, much with, 3, us late, 4, and soon, 5. Right? This is a predetermined rhythm. It's a conventional rhythm for an Italian sonnet called iambic pentameter. If you took English 2, you had to write one of these things, and so you're probably very familiar with this. But in the second line, right, watch this. Wordsworth interrupts that natural rhythm with a trochaic substitution. Getting and spending, we lay waste our powers. Okay? So getting is a trochaic word, and lay waste is a spondaic foot. In other words, the line loses its natural rhythm. It becomes, like the line at the very end of the octet, out of tune. Okay? Here, Wordsworth, as a skillful poet, has not only used, okay, the rhythm of the pattern of stresses and slacks in the line to just make the line musical, but he's also used it, okay, in a really cool way to help manifest the theme of the poem in the sonic structure of the poem. It's really cool, all right? Building on that, rhythm in poetry refers to the pattern of stresses, slacks, and also pauses in poetic language, which is organized by the poet, or which are organized by the poet to create musicality emphasis, and tone. All right. A caesura is a light but a definite pause within a line. Okay. Oftentimes, caesuras come at punctuation marks in poetry, and maybe a comma, obviously a period, or a semicolon, or a colon. Those indicate a pause grammatically. Okay, but not always. Sometimes the line is not broken by a comma, but it's just a natural place where an individual would take a breath in a normal sentence. All right. Now, an end stop line is a line that pauses at the end of the line. So the thought concludes at the end of a line, and the reader naturally pauses at the end of a line. A run-on line, using this thing called enjambment, doesn't pause at the end of the line, but the line runs on into the next line that follows. Okay? Now, once again, this can be used by skillful poets in order to help communicate meaning. I want to look quickly at an example from a poem by a woman named Gwendolyn Brooks. All right, so this poem's uh, is addressed to the pool players, 7 at the Golden Shovel. All right, so she's writing this poem called "We Real Cool" about how cool these 7 young adolescent men think that they are, who are skipping school and hanging out at a dive bar playing some pool. Okay, we real cool. Pause. We left school. Enjambment. All right, between we left school. Midline pause. We lurk late. We strike straight. We sing sin. We thin gin, which just means add water to gin. It signals that they're not like hardened alcoholics, all right, but they certainly think that they're cool. They're just adding water to their gin. Okay, we jazz June. We die soon. All right, so every line here, I love this poem. Okay, every line here is enjambed, even between the stanzas, which is a way. All right, that run-on line, that use of enjambment is a way of making palpable in the sonic structure of the poem. All right, of making palpable the attitude of these young men who rush on to the next thing in their life, who rush on, who live fast, right? But, all right, the only line that is in stopped is the last line. We die soon, right? So here, the theme of the poem is really simple, right? Young individuals who live fast and rush on through their adolescence, rushing on to adult forms of behavior, skipping out on their education, skipping out on enjoying the process of being young and rushing on to things that they think are adult and sophisticated behavior, are simply just rushing on to their death. Okay, that's kind of our dominant impression here. But that impression is made for us, it's communicated for us through the sonic structure of Brooks' use of caesura, pause, and enjambment, right, throughout the course of the poem. Okay, cool? Yeah, awesome. All right, let's talk about meter. So all language has a rhythm, but meter is what we refer to a pre-established rhythm for a poem. All right, so for those of you who are like musicians out there, this would be like the measure or the number of beats in a measure in a line of music. Right, there's a standard measure of beats. Now, in a piece of music, the time signature can change. Right, you can alter it. Okay, but when you establish it, you follow it. And if you don't follow it, right, if there's some sort of like arrhythmic portion of a song, I played some songs like this when I was in band. There were these like weird little pauses where we as a band would do something that broke the measured meter or the time signature of the song, and then we would go back to the time signature. Okay, it was like a stupid song, and I hated it, but it was supposed to be like artsy and modern. Okay, but the bottom line here is poetic meter refers to a pattern of stresses and slacks predetermined by the poet and the number of feet in a line. Okay, so pattern of stresses and slacks, number of feet in a line. Okay, so the first way that we describe the pattern of stresses and slacks is in rising feet, which we would call iambs and anapest, or falling feet, which we would call trochees and dactyls. All right, so a rising foot moves from an unstressed sound to a stressed sound. Like, for example, all right, Dickinson's iambic meter in I Heard a Fly Buzz When I Died, with blue, uncertain, stumbling buzz. Now, obviously, you don't read it that emphatically when you read it naturally, but that is where the emphasis is. Or Shakespeare's iambic pentameter from Romeo and Juliet. But soft, what light through yonder window breaks? It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon, who is already sick and pale with grief, that thou, her maid, art far more fair than she. Okay, so Juliet is so hot that she even makes the moon jealous. Wow. All right, anapestic feet are trisyllabic, unstressed, unstressed, stressed. For example, now this is the law of the jungle, as old and as true as the sky, and the wolf that shall keep it may prosper, but the wolf that shall break it must die. This is a Rudyard Kipling reference here. Again, anapestic and dactylic or trisyllabic feet in English poetry are extremely rare, and they sound kind of contrived. They don't sound great. Okay, most English poetry, you can sort of bet, unless it sounds like a nursery rhyme. Okay, unless it sounds like a nursery rhyme, it's probably iambic. Okay, or it's probably trochaic. It's probably disyllabic instead of trisyllabic. Okay, so iambic, rising, trochaic, falling, stressed, unstressed, like tiger, tiger, burning, bright, much more aggressive meter, much more emphatic meter. In the forest of the night, what immortal hand or eye could frame their fearful symmetry? Right, could frame is an iambic substitution in the fourth line of that quatrain. All right. So other feet, spondees and pierces. A spondee is just double emphasized. A pierce is double unemphasized. You can't have a meter of spondees or a meter of pierces, obviously. Okay, so you're going to have some rises and some falls. And how you structure those rises and falls, if you do it in a predetermined way, is called meter. Okay, cool. So an example of a poem with meter that we studied. All right, I heard a fly buzz when I died. Or my life had stood a loaded gun. An example of a poem with no predetermined meter. Ready? This is just to say. Or much madness is divinest sense. Those are open form. Those are unmetered. Okay? All right. And then finally, okay, poetic meter is the pattern of stresses and slacks and also the number of feet in a line. So how do you describe the number of feet in a line? Well, in most English poetry, as I already described, a foot of poetry is disyllabic, which means it has two syllables. So how many feet are in a line is simply how many syllables there are in a line divided by 2. So, but soft, that's 2 syllables. What light? Through yonder window breaks. All right, we have 10 total syllables. We call that iambic pentameter. All right, iambic pentameter or pentameter. All right, so syllabic meters just simply count the number of feet in a line, and then in disyllabic meters divide it by 2. If it's a trisyllabic meter, then you would divide it by 3. Okay, again, not going to read a lot of trisyllabic meter. The old Latin and Greek epics, okay, like Homer's Iliad, Homer's Odyssey, Virgil's Aeneid, they were written in dactylic hexameter. Okay, you don't see a lot of that in English poetry. So we describe this as mono. That would be 1 foot poetry. Okay, very, very short line, just 2 syllables. Di, which is 2 feet, that'd be 4 syllables. Tri, 3 feet, 6 syllables. Tetra, 4 feet, 8 syllables. Penta, 5 feet, 10 syllables. Hexa, 6 feet, 12 syllables. And on and on. Okay. So you don't get a lot of lines longer than like hexameter or really pentameter oftentimes, because those lines start spanning out over the course of the entire page, and it's just not normal. Okay, so that's our lecture about rhythm and meter. Okay, rhythm and meter. I hope you guys have a great day. Tomorrow we're going to be we're going to be applying some of these principles as we study Gerard Manley Hopkins' poem, God's Grandeur. Okay, next week we'll be taking a test about all of our poetic information. Make sure they're keeping up with their progress checks, and look out for that bonus video that is going to offer a screen recording that reasons through some of those questions. All right, have a great day.